Welcome to the Open Mic Podcast Show with Mike Midgley.
Hey, and welcome to the Open Mic Podcast. On today's episode, I'm excited to be covering the topic of overcoming your fear. Today's influencer guest is Laura Di Franco from Brave Healer Productions, and Laura is based out of Maryland on the East Coast. Welcome to the show, Laura. It's an absolute pleasure to have you today.
Thank you. It is fabulous to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And, you know, if you want to, before we get started, if you want to connect with Laura, she's on social media. We'll put all the links in the show notes and on the app. But head over to Laura Di Franco. That's LauraDifranco.com. Also, a big shout out as a fellow podcaster. Check out the podcast extension on that URL as well. We'll put that link in, Laura's sort of podcasting, very, very, very strong community. As entrepreneurs, we go through a lot of ups and downs, would I say, in life. And, sometimes being able to connect and find a community that sort of you can become part of, call it a mastermind, call it whatever you want to do. He's a great sort of thing and a release. And I'd highly recommend that you check out Laura's sort of site. Head over there, check out the great work that her and the team are doing.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having sort of checked out your site and, do quite a bit of research. We're going to find out a little bit more about Laura. I'm embarrassed with the riches that she's got from being an author of 8 books. And I suppose it starts just to learn a little bit about Laura. I know it's probably like kids. They've all got their own sort of unique attributes, but what is your favorite book and why? I suppose is I know that's like a bounty in the general, but I'd just love to know that as an author. Do you have one? Was it the first because it's the one you got published first, or is the one that really nails it for what you do and believe in?
Gosh, that's a hard question. It's a hard question too, right? Listen, the best story ever is about the first book, because if you ask my friends and family, they would tell you that I had talked about writing a book for my entire life and career. And it didn't happen. But the year that it happened, my son and I, actually, he was 5.5 at the time, we were looking for an activity to do, to get him involved with. And we went to check out a Taekwondo class together. And we were leaving the class and he looks up at me and I'm looking down at him. I'm like, well, what do you think? Are we going to do this? What are you going to do? And so he looks at me and he says, well, I'll do it if you do it, Mom. And 6 years later, we earned our black belts together.
Amazing.
And so that's going to be the book, right? So I really have to say that living, healing, and Taekwondo, my very first effort of putting my story out loud into the world, I kind of have a little special place in my heart for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as author of 8 books, and you've co-authored, I think, 4 others from there. There's the Brave Healing, your High Vibe Business. But tell me a little bit more. These sort of 5 books with the warrior sort of title in there: Warrior Love, Warrior Joy, Warrior Soul, Warrior Dreams, Warrior Desire. Don't worry, in the show notes we'll put all the links to Amazon in there and Laura's side as well if you want to check those out. And they're like a journal, aren't they? And I think you said to inspire, and things like that. What's the connection there? Sort of give a little heads up for people who are maybe checking out the books. What's the connection with this warrior love and warrior, soul and things like that?
So those are all poetry. And I have been journaling since I was 15 years old. And, if you opened up some of those journals, you definitely read some corny love poems. And I realized I had been writing that kind of stuff really my whole life. But I had a moment back in 2014 where I was lucky enough to have read something that I wrote in my journal to a very large group of people. It's probably over 200 people at one of my healing courses. And a woman came up to me after she heard me share it, and she tapped me on the shoulder, turned around, and she said, wow, thanks for sharing that poem with us. And through all of the healing work I had done over the years, right up until the moment that I was brave enough to actually stand up and share my words with a group of people, like I always say, that was the day I became a poet. Wow. And at least I don't know, 48 to 50 poems came out of me after that course week.
Just released it, just came.
It was like I had opened up took the cork out and given myself permission to just let these words roll. And so the Warrior Journals, the very first one, Warrior Love, a journal to inspire your fiercely alive whole self. Was those poems, but I also wanted to invite the reader into my world of journaling.
Yeah.
And that was a really important piece. So yeah, it was a lot of poetry. I had to do it. So I did it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not as avid journaler as you are. I did mine with the Jim Rohn stuff years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
I studied Jim's one of my sort of, heroes, I suppose, if you want to call that. And I used to order every year a Jim Rohn journal, or 2 or 3 actually. And obviously they've got them shipped in from the States. And I'd write away. And then I'd sort of scribble in them. And I never really kept them up. And I think if I look back, I don't really have any regrets over my sort of career. But I wish I'd have kept those journals in a little bit more prestige, because they went from journals and the valuable ideas and those crazy things doing sat on a plane or in an airport lounge or whatever it would be, to them sort of being on a phone with a client and then using it as a scribble pad. And it wasn't quite right, and never sort of kept them in the sort of condition that could ever be transcribed into something like that. So I'm super envious, but a big congratulations for those. I suppose bouncing back, that, your focus today, all about the healing and things like that, health and empowerment. How did that sort of start out? Because, you got 30 years experience in that. Tell us a little bit more about where that journey started way back when.
Back when, people were asking me what I wanted to do with my life. I was an athlete, and I have been for a really long time. And I kind of had the notion that I wanted to help people feel better, whether it was like athletic injuries or whatever. I thought I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor,
Right, yeah.
But in high school, and believe it or not, this is when it started for me. I was so lucky that at 16, a physical therapist came into the career center at her high school and did a talk. Yeah. And I left the talk jazzed. She was jazzed about what she did, and everything about it. I was like, so I started to volunteer in a couple places after I heard her talk, and gosh, the rest is history there.
So, yeah. I mean, we talked earlier about the martial arts, how you got involved with your son there. And that's obviously coming, it's very disciplined. Obviously it requires, concentration, discipline. A lot of people start things, whether it's learning a new language, whether it's getting as becoming an entrepreneur, or, some type of martial arts or sports. A lot of people don't always see that through. And you didn't only become black belt. I think you've progressed, I think is it to 3rd tier or something like that, or is that 3rd Dan or 3rd tier? I'm not quite sure. Apologies. Any martial arts people, you shoot me a message using the hashtag the open mic. And you could say, Mike, you're totally wrong. You've missed it, sort of thing there. But, why did you stick out of it? Was it just that competition between you and your son? Is it back of that, athleticism? Because it's such a disciplined sport, and no doubt you get hit in the face a couple of times as well. So it's not something like just learning a language, is it? So just tell us more about that journey. And
it's all of the things you said, but it's also a way of life, and that's what turned me on the most about it. Because, I got into it for my son, right? It was just a simple thing. Let's go get exercise together. Yeah. But man, oh man, did it switch into something different very quickly, because I realized that there were things that were overlapping in the dojang and in my life. And I thought, whoa. And as already a healer healthcare practitioner, I was interested in that journey anyway. Right? But here was a sport that was giving me some of that integration. And it was also giving me a way to deal with the fears, the inner critic stuff going on in my head. And I just, I started to be very interested in that piece of the journey. Yeah. The athleticism of it also, just to say really quickly, like, you're talking to somebody who's done everything. I played soccer all through college. I'm a 3-time marathoner. And by the time I got to martial arts, I had 2 babies. Yeah. And my body had changed so much that I was starting to have some problems running. And it was an identity crisis, I have to admit, because being an athlete was part of who I was in the world. And martial arts came around at just the right time. And it was something that wasn't hurting, literally, physically, but that it also did that other piece I was talking about. So, yeah.
Amazing.
I was hooked.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you run your own sort of business now. And, our show is all about, entrepreneurs and bridging that gap between idea and successful implementation. What is the biggest learning you think you could advise the entrepreneur listeners to sort of say, what did I take from martial arts and how do I apply that in the business? Not literally punching the customers, of course, but and I appreciate it's a non sort of aggressive thing from purposely, it's more defensive combat. But that discipline, being an entrepreneur is so disciplined. It requires immense pain tolerance. 1 minute you're up at the high of the mountain, celebrating success. The next you're sliding down the mountainside, getting grazed on your backside with gravel, as you hit the bottom hard. And it does
How
take
do you know all this?
Just 27 years of being in that sort of roller coaster of highs and lows. But yeah. I call it, here's something, Laura, and again, apologies to my listeners, they'll probably hear me say this 1,000 times, but I call it hiking through the range of entrepreneurial life. You're planting the flag on Everest 1 minute, breathing fresh air, being glorious, and then you're sliding down the mountainside, grazed, battered, and bruised, wondering where it all went wrong at the other side. But back to the point I was making, from that discipline of martial arts, all the things around that, was there something that entrepreneurs could sort of take and, sort of apply in their business? What's the biggest thing that you took that you applied in your business life?
Well, I want to talk about two really important things. From the healing journey and the martial arts journey, it's the awareness, because if you have awareness, then you get a choice. Yep. And you want choices, but none of this for an entrepreneur works without action taking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, of course, that sport is very action oriented, but it's also grounding, centering, energy, and thought process, that's behind it. Like my master's quote is, discipline the mind, the body will follow.
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, you better have your mindset right. You better have a foundation of ninja level awareness so that you can then take the action that you need to take. The billion dollar solution is, how do we get people to do what they already know they should be doing? And I found myself a lot of the times in the beginning realizing I was thinking about what I should be doing instead of actually just doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So action, you guys, action, action, action. Action is where you get the clarity you're craving. Yeah. And instead of just sitting and strategizing and planning about getting that clarity, if you just can get yourself to move, maybe without the feeling of motivation or confidence or courage. Like you have to move without those feelings. And then it's through the experiences you get to feel like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make there about that. There's so many people will strategize. I mean, I do a lot of strategic work myself, but you can't implement strategy. It's impossible. You've got to transfuse it through some type of plan and then take action to get it done and chip away at it bit by bit, because sometimes problems can be so big. And if you sat there thinking, I've got this mountain in front of me. Well, nobody scaled Everest on day one. They trained, then they did a base camp, and then they did so many sort of stages, and I'm sure martial arts is very similar to that. It's staged process and development, isn't it? And entrepreneurship is exactly the same. So it's interesting there. And, I love the statement of discipline, the mind and the body will follow. Because, if your head's wrong, it doesn't matter where you're throwing your fists, I suppose, or blocking or whatever, you're going to be out of time. And that's the same, the opportunities that are in business, it's about timing and understanding how to approach those. And that's great advice. Thank you for sharing that, Laura.
And it's not if you're going to get kicked in the head, it's when.
Yes.
So again, just taking that moment from the martial arts journey into entrepreneurship. So, don't worry too much about if this is going to happen. It's more like when it will happen. And there are no such things as mistakes or failures. Those things are learning opportunities and stepping stones. And so you might as well step a little faster, Yeah.
I spoke with a guy called Mayor, and he talks about fail forward fastly. You know what I mean? And you do that, so I'm with you all the way.
Yeah.
Before we get into the, that more about, overcoming the fear, I know you've got a passion for travel, and I'd love to know, what is the most inspiring experience you've had, on your journeys and things like that?
Wow. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of interesting travel. And I think that I would have to say Africa was probably the most crazy, amazing adventure. And I'm kind of like that as a personality too. Like, I go for the crazy, amazing adventures. I also love a little Caribbean beach once in a while too, like with my little pina colada. But to be able to see wildlife up close that I would never see otherwise, to be on an adventure like that, that was really awesome.
Yeah, and it's a different experience than seeing it in a zoo. It's
exactly.
Totally, I get that. So tell us a little bit more about the business services that you offer. I know you do workshops, speaking, engagements to health professionals. How do you help clients? Just tell us a little bit more about, what your business model is and how that's, how that's laid out.
Thank you. The Brave Healer Revolution is really about helping you into that place where you are expressing the message out loud, whether it be writing like blogging or books, or even your website copy sometimes is difficult,
Yeah.
To speaking on a stage and really having the courage to put the vibration of your voice to the words, which is where people begin to know you and love you and trust you, and they want to be in your world. And I really believe that one of the reasons I was born was to inspire people that their fear of not good enough is boring at this point. So this is not about you anymore. It's about the person whose life you might change or even save if you would just get over yourself and share the message, right? So I help people into that book writing state, talk crafting, maybe they want to be on a podcast like this and they're just terrified that they'll do it wrong or they'll say the wrong thing, right? So, yeah.
I say the wrong thing all the time. So
exactly.
Again, it is. When I was doing the research on before the show, Laura, you talk about the brave healing and please correct me if I've got this slightly out of sync, but it's like the combination of the sort of the body awareness, the meditation, and that intuitive writing. How did that come around? How did you connect those dots? Because as entrepreneurs, we're always trying to figure something out, aren't we? Whether it's that next unique proposition or value proposition, or I'm not saying the next smartphone or something, guys, but we're always trying to figure something out. And we've got three very maybe to the uneducated eye, and I raise my hand straight up here, being uneducated in this, but when I look at, I can understand business models, finance models, marketing models, operational, executional, fund. I can understand all that. But when I get body awareness linked to meditation, I can see that to a degree, but then intuitive writing. Tell us a little bit about how that clicked for you and how all that came together.
Oh, I love that. Well, being a journaler since I was 15, and then, starting to blog for my business and write books and things. And so of course that was all happening, but here's I want to give you an idea of this amazing exercise to think about, because this can be a big time game changer for a lot of people. Your intuition is the language of it is in your body. And if you get really good at feeling what the yes and the no are in your body, then you immediately have a tool to follow. I call this purpose-driven fear, because you'll understand it as a sensation inside of you. So there's the body awareness connection. But then if you even write down a list of all the ways the yes feels. So for me, it's light and it's flexible and it's strong and I feel, a certain way in my body. But that's a lot of the times that's easy for people. What's hard is what's the no feel like, because
that's interesting.
You and I both know people who have been saying yes when they mean no their whole lives. Okay. So if you guys know what the no feels like in you, again, I'll give you an example. For me, I started to feel tight in my chest.
Yeah.
There would be a little choky feeling in my throat. I would get a gut ache or nausea, and right. So those were no's. My intuition was saying no, and kind of having a conversation with me like, oh, wow, you're really going to say yes when I am telling you no? So body awareness, but then writing it down so that the idea is outside of you and you are looking at it as an observer in writing is a level of awareness that will change your game. And if you would like one more step beyond that even, it's going to be reading your words out loud to yourself.
Yeah, it's like an affirmation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, because once you put the vibration of your voice to the word, that's another level of awareness. You might even find yourself asking, oh my gosh, do I think that? And I loved putting everything together. I've always loved the writing, and I thought, okay, let's figure out how to work this so that the writing becomes a healing tool. And I write to feng shui my soul. Like I write to clear a space. And you guys know about physical decluttering. It really changes your energy. So yeah, imagine what you can do if you declutter the insides of you.
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing it. I want to share a little quick story back with you. And this will probably confuse not only myself, you, and the rest of the audience, but here it is. So from 24 to 30, I was really successful growing up, and then we sort of in business with starting businesses, exiting businesses. We took a business public in 2004, and so you could argue, I'm the sort of the most humble person in the world. I'm a big believer in altruism and things like that. But up to that 24 to 34-year-old, we had 2 6- and 7-figure exits, and we put a business on a public flotation. And here's my story, and I don't really always know. I've always been a disruptor in business, I suppose, changing and creating new products and services. And I used to have this policy, Laura. This is a true story. Not a lot of people know this. Some of my inner clients will know this because I share this with them. But I used to get up early because I used to get up at 5:36, get ready in the car for 6:37. I used to drive sort of 45 miles to work and then sort of lead a company. And I used to call it my 6 a.m. moment. And in the morning, I used to get up and whatever had got on my mind, and this was serious decision stuff like, do we acquire that company? Do we float this? Do we exit that? Do we raise that venture capital or whatever? These are big decisions. And whatever my gut told me I had to do at 6 o'clock in the morning, I did the opposite, right? Seriously. So whatever my gut seemed to tell me, I went in and went, no, that's it. Unless it was blindly obvious, I'm talking about those 50-50 decisions that you've sat down, you've debated in the boardrooms, you've been on the phone with your director colleagues at night, you've spoke to different views, you've spoke to your mentor, the non-exec directors, as I say. And I used to get up in the morning, and what I used to find that first clear point in the morning was totally and utterly clear. The traffic wasn't busy, there wasn't any noise out there, and I thought, well, what do I want to do? Well, my gut tells me I do this. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to go do something totally different. And I have to say, it served me exceptionally well up to 2012, when unfortunately the world went bust and the financial crisis. But there's a crazy one. I've never managed to figure that out. And I don't know if you've got a scientific reason for that, whether it was just damn good luck or something. I've got absolutely no idea. But, it's just something where I tried going with my gut and it didn't always work. And I thought, hey, my gut's wrong. I need to do something different. And I think that's how I maybe became a disruptor of products and put market leading products out there. I don't know. It's one of those things I've never been able to explain.
Well, you're making me think of T. Harv Eker says, don't believe anything you think. And so sometimes I think we're connecting with our gut, but it's actually not the voice to listen to. It's the one we've been conditioned to listen to.
Interesting.
And so it's really behooves you to understand your own patterns, especially when they are habitual and conditions, right? And so, who knows, but it worked for you, so it worked for you, right? I'm a practical gal. I like what works.
Absolutely. So throw the rule book out and then let's go for it. But that's great. Laura, it's been an absolute delight listening to your story, and I'm so excited. And I suppose before we move into the topic a little bit more, are you planning on continuing with the Taekwondo and more books and to get to stage 4 and 5 of the martial arts? Or have you reached a level where you think, I need to do other things? Is that passion still burning high for that?
Well, the books for sure are still happening. I even have 2 already waiting in my computer for 2020. So to be announcing that I'm a 10-time published author is going to be pretty fun. But martial arts, yes and no, slowing down, and mostly just wanting to connect with my body in a little bit different way. Martial arts is not an easy sport to practice. Yeah. And I've had to back off a little bit in the last year for the sparring. I mean, believe it or not, I was in full contact sparring up until 50 years old. So, so I'm working it, but I'm thinking a little bit about it now, a little more. And, so my journey in martial arts will be a little different, I think, this year. We'll see how it goes.
Well, best of luck with whichever channel you go and whatever speed that you go. Best of luck with that, for sure.
Thank you.
So tell us more about overcoming your fear. You talk about the foundation of a thriving life and business is awareness. And you touched on that earlier about that awareness when we talked about that awareness and intuitive writing, things like that. Dig a little bit deeper for us, if you could, Laura, about why awareness is part of that sort of authentic healing sort of practice and things like that.
Wow, this one, y'all, is foundational. This is the foundation of a life well lived. It's a foundation of a business that thrives. It's the foundation of a relationship you absolutely want to tell the world about. It's everything. And the more I practice, the more I'm a smiling, happy soul when I wake up in the morning, the more that I don't need an alarm clock to wake up. When you can reach for joy in any moment, no matter what, and I really mean no matter what. So y'all can throw any example you want at me, and I'm going to tell you how awareness will allow you to flip your switch to something that feels better. Yeah. Or that's something that serves your business goals better, something that helps your relationship dive deep into a bigger love. I mean, we could be talking about any topic, right? So it's really being the observer. And so what does that mean? It means that I'm stepping outside of myself. I'm watching what I'm thinking, believing, and how I'm behaving. And I'm responding to those things with awareness, which means I get the choice of how to respond. I'm not walking around triggered and reacting constantly. And triggered and reacting is no fun anyway. It feels bad. It makes arguments. It makes wars. I mean, so, seriously, if you want to think about that. So isn't it cool to be able to respond to life in a way that feels better? And I know I'm not being specific enough there, but it really is kind of the way you have to aim yourself if you're wanting things to change. Yeah.
You mentioned business goals earlier, and there'll be a lot of listeners who, at the time of this recording, it's just approaching the end of 2019. It'll come out in 2020. But people will be setting business goals. Is there, and I appreciate this is, by the way, this is not business or financial advice, guys. It's just a discussion. When people are approaching business goals, about this awareness, is there any additional sort of approaches you would sort of say that the listeners could adopt to set the business goals or even life goals, if you want to call it that, using this technique?
Yeah, and if you're a business owner, first of all, you are a warrior and you are on a healing journey, whether you think you are or not. And, what's the big vision? And are you thinking big enough? Does it scare you a little bit every day? Yeah. Or are you just sort of content and living a little bit zombie-like? Are you thinking like a business owner? I know that I went to physical therapy school. I didn't get my MBA. So I was self-taught for business once I opened up my own business and then even transitioned to business number 2. So, that's a lot of learning along the way. And the biggest thing that I figured out is somewhere along the line was that I wasn't really thinking like a business owner. I was still in the employee mindset.
Yeah, that's a big mistake. I see that a lot. Yeah. Absolutely.
And if you're there, you're not getting anywhere. you are going to have to take bigger risks to have bigger victories. Yeah. So a coach said to me one time, give me the big problems because that means I get the big wins. And, be careful what you wish for in terms of big problems. But if you get a big problem, look at it as that opportunity, to have a big win as well. But thinking that way, and it's always interesting that we're going to go back to talking about thinking, but your mindset is key. There's so many more things for entrepreneurs to realize, especially if they are thinking bigger, wanting to play bigger, wanting to affect more people and help more people in the world and really change the world, right? So yeah, are you thinking like a business owner? How big is your vision?
Yep.
Are you going to think about your team this year? Do you even have a team? Do you have systems? What? You don't even know what that is, right? So like there was all these different things that I had to figure out. I wasn't quite there yet. And then when they started to fall into place, it was terrifying a little bit, but it was also the most exciting time for me in terms of my business because I could see how it was going to work out.
Yeah.
So
and systems is a biggie because the process scales and things like that. Yes. I love the idea about what scares you. Is that vision big enough? Because it's too easy to give up on your dreams. It's too easy to sort of, like you say, the great advice from Laura there about thinking like an employee as opposed to as an entrepreneur or a business owner. It can kill that passion and drive if you do that and go out there. Okay, I know there's different takes on this. Somebody like Grant Cardone would say, hey, 10x it up there, and even if you get to 7x, you're still probably done better than what you would have done. And then there's the argument on the other side, which is, hey, what's the point of doing that if you're never going to hit it? So there's both sides, but dream big, give it your conviction. And I love that advice. That's fantastic, Laura. Thank you. I've certainly written that down for mine goals. Is it big enough? And that's a big question mark I've written on my show notes here. So thank you. And I mean, you talk also about your fear of not being good enough, is boring. And fear is a feeling that you can have more fun with. People will be sat listening to the show thinking, I'm fearful of my business, I'm fearful of running out of cash, or fearful of losing this customer, or fearful. Talk to us more about that and why it's boring and what, how they can approach that better.
Yeah, I mean, all right, I will tell this to you in terms of a really amazing story. Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Back in 2016, I was on Facebook, my business messenger pinged, and it was a stranger, and she was reaching out to me, and she said, hey, I read this thing that you wrote on your blog, and I really loved it. Could you please send me some more links? I've been struggling a little lately. Yep. And so, me being the helper that I am, I said, of course, give me a second. And I dropped her some more links, self-care, things like that. I had learned she was a mother of 5.
Yeah.
And so I went a step further though, and I wrote a blog, dedicated it to her anonymously, and Amazing. Asked my audience to step up in comments because I knew I had mothers. I knew I had healers in my audience. I knew that I had people who had been dealing with depression, which I learned that she was also. And so they did. They stepped up. They gave some love and support and advice. And my friend, who is a friend now, her name is Shirley. She doesn't mind that I talk about her, felt hope. And what I didn't know at the time, and I learned only later, was that she had actually been planning the suicide note she'd write to her husband and 5 kids. Shirley went on to writing her very first 2 blogs to the world, one about her real story with depression, being the mom of 5. And the second blog was a call out to other mothers. Like, hey, reach out. If I can do this, you can do this. Oh my God, Mike, like if that's the only thing I ever do with my life, it will have been enough. And so
objectives achieved. Yeah.
God, absolutely. I say to you guys, your fear of not good enough is boring. Write your stuff, speak your words, share your story, do your thing, because what if you save someone's life? What if,
That's amazing. That's amazing. And there is too many of us in there, as entrepreneurs. You sat there, if you're struggling with content, like I say, it's for me, we're avid content creators, avid bloggers, avid podcasters, and, things like that. We were just saying, I think we put 170 articles on LinkedIn so far already. And, there'll be people who've done thousands, but, that obviously we've got a lot of exclusive content in this community. And I said, wow, where did all that come from? Because I remember, when we said, oh, we've now done 50 podcasts. Oh, we've now got 100 articles. And, like you say, if you help somebody, either stopping turning down a cul-de-sac, if you save somebody's life, that one piece of advice can just mean the difference between somebody making it or staying out there. As listeners, as entrepreneurs, you've got such an amazing piece of value, whether that's in business, whether it's in life, in friendship, in advice, sharing an experience. And I was fortunate enough to interview both Leonard Kim and Ryan Follam, the authors of Ditch the Act, which you could go out and get. That's an amazing book. And that's just where they sort of drop the curtain. There's nothing, no secrets, sharing the successes as well as sharing the, the failures, and, about that authenticity of how, the ups and the downs of your life. People just don't want to see how pretend, successful people, because, I think we're something ridiculous like 60, 70 episodes of the podcast now. And outside of the first 10, which, by the way, if you listen to the first 10, they absolutely suck off the open mic. They're really, really bad. But we left them on there just to show the progress of the show. And now we get to interview great people like Laura, and authors and TEDx speakers, and founders of Barefoot Wine, Michael and Bonnie Harvey, people like, and we get all these sort of people on there. But every single body from, you look at Michael Hooley and Bonnie Harvey, the founders of Barefoot Wine, the America's #1 wine brand. They founded it with no wine experience, and they failed big time, a million times. And Michael calls it, the brick of the day. You get your brick of your day, which is a failure, and you have to overcome that obstacle. Through to some wildly successful people who train NASA astronauts and Navy SEALs and things like that. And every single one, Laura, they've all crashed, they've all burnt. Maybe they've not gone bankrupt or bust or, got to a state where they was considering maybe even taking their own life, which is, if you're at that state, please either reach out to me. I'm not a therapist, but if you want to have a chat, we're here. Use the hashtag The Open Mic. We'll set up a call. I can put you in touch with other therapists. Bring this some mountains. Whatever. Just get some help. But every single one of the successful people has had tremendous obstacles, failure, and it's that resilience. Just don't give up, because there's hope out there. And whether you reach out to Laura or somebody you trust and can confide in, please do reach out to me. Use the hashtag The Open Mic. Or jump on my LinkedIn and connect with me, and I'm happy to help.
We're here on the planet to connect with each other, entrepreneurs, non-entrepreneurs. Just people, just human beings, right? And one of the things, in fact, I just wrote an amazing poem with the title of "Purpose Has a Face." So if you're attached to a topic or a cause, I signed up as a physical therapist because I wanted to help people. Yeah. Well, I can tell you now that when, Shirley's face pops up in my mind and, in the morning, I'm good to go. Yeah. Purpose has a face. So bring it, connect with people. That's people amazing. Are why we are doing this.
Yeah, it becomes real, doesn't it? And, it's a bit like if you're a visual learner, you see it, you get it, you can implement it. And that's, it's maybe not the right example to compare, but I get it. Your purpose, your way of helping people, you see Shirley's face, you've had a positive impact, and that's tremendous. And so it's well done. That's such a great story. Thanks for sharing it with us. And, I hope you take, as you listen to this, you sort of dig deep. And, what I challenge you to do is say, shoot me a message, use the hashtag The Open Mic, shoot me a message. Who have you helped today? And what impact? You might buy a homeless person at a Starbucks or buy them a sandwich or whatever. It doesn't matter. That, just don't go and boost Starbucks shares or anything here. But just go and help somebody and shoot me a message. Yes. Let me know how you help these guys or gals and get that. I'd love to hear that.
I love it.
But thanks for sharing that. That's really touching and well done. And I suppose, as we're getting a little bit, not deeper down this rabbit hole, but really getting into this subject of overcoming fear, I know you cover it's not so much about what we call positive thinking. There's something better out there, and I know we've touched on some of these, but just dig a bit deeper into that. What is better than that positive thinking mindset?
Well, it's feeling good. It's being in gratitude, love, joy, energy, right? And so you can think positively. That's very, very cool. It's a foundational mindset. But what if you could conjure up the energy of the good vibes and be that as you show up in the world, in front of the people that we're talking about and everything that you're doing. So what I think is better is the feeling and the connection to understanding what your feeling and energy feels like, and practicing understanding you do have that choice again. I know now I'm repeating myself a little bit, but there is magic in that.
Yeah.
And so once the light bulb goes off, you realize that you're aware of it. So that's first step. But then all of a sudden it's up to you. Like, you have to take responsibility at that point for everything, including the next choice you make to grab for the feeling, grab for the energy shift. Everything is energy anyway, right? So
absolutely.
Now, for your business people, like, what if you were doing that every single day in your business? Don't you see how being in that kind of energy would then feel contagious in a good way to all of the people around you? And that is a game changer, because you'll start to attract what you need. You'll attract the connections. People want more of that. They don't want you to be in your fear energy and your doubt and your uncertainty and all the other stuff, negativity even sometimes, because they don't want more of that, They've
maybe got so much of that at home, or bringing it there.
Who knows?
Quick story. I did some consulting work. We sold the company in 2000 and I had a non-competition clause. So I either were going to have a year out, or I thought I'll go and do some consulting in a non-competing industry. And I did with a Mercedes-Benz automotive dealer. And the head of the dealership, I'd get in before him, which is no different. I was just used to the early starts. But I'd walk in, I'd say, "Morning, John, how are you?" And he'd go, "No, I'm all right." I thought, wow, you're the leader of this business. You got maybe, 40 or 50 people here. And is that really what people want to see? And I always thought there's got to be a better way. And I'm not saying live a lie, but ultimately when, your team around you are asking you as a leader, are you okay? It's okay to tell a little white lie of it. Yep, we're doing great. Go and keep that negativity behind closed doors, or beat yourself up behind closed doors. Try not to spread it. I think that's what you're saying there. And that was a real life example. And it always stuck with me, even 20 years later. I always think, how do you develop as a leader? You've got to be that person that people look to as that shining light. And sure, you're going to have a bad day. It's never all roses. We get that. But ultimately, always be considerate that maybe people are looking at you for that motivation or that drive to get going. But quickly on that point, you mentioned about getting started in the morning, feeling good. God, 20 odd, 30 odd years ago, I read Think and Grow Rich, and, about the affirmation statements in the morning. Is that still relevant? Is there another way you do it? Is it about putting a picture of something that's important to you? I know you mentioned earlier about, you think of Shirley's face and boom, you're set for the day. Is there another way that the listeners can apply that, or is there any other tips, or is it just down to their own, personal preference?
I love all the things that you just mentioned, and that gets me to, it's what works for you. But if you know Dr. Wayne Dyer, who has passed, but he wrote a book called Excuses Be Gone. Yeah. And I love the title of that book. But he taught in that book, the first 5 minutes as you're waking up and you're kind of in that half sleep, half wake state. So that you're waking, that would be the time to start your day off with feelings of gratitude, even for being in your warm bed. It's as simple as that.
A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah. So that's how I love to begin and end my day, so that I set my day up that way. And I also set my sleep time up that way. And that's a really, really awesome, positive cycle of momentum that helps me run, from morning until night, and then do it all again.
Yeah, that's great.
There's
Love
so
it.
many things, right? Affirmations, there's meditation, there's, oh, wow, we could have a long list of
So really
tools.
find what works for you. But, I just want to pick you up on what you said about, waking up in a warm bed. For those who follow Zig Ziglar and his work, Zig did a show once, and there's this lady in the front row, and she came up and she says, she managed to speak to him at the end, and she says, I hate my job, and I hate this, and I hate that, and I hate the other, and she's really, really negative. And I won't murder Zig's, so go and check it out. It's in there. But ultimately, he sat down with the lady, so he says, well, do you get paid more than the minimum wage? Yeah, I get paid more than minimum wage, and do you get better than average benefits? Well, yeah, we get better average benefits, more time off, and do you have good working environment? Yeah, and this, that, and the other, and all these things he reeled off, and she went to anyway. Zig, if you've ever listened to Zig, and he's got this he had this amazing humor, and then he said he bounces the story, and he's an amazing storyteller, and he bounces the story, and then he says, I was doing a show in a city about 3 months later, and there's the same woman in the front row, and she came up to me afterwards, and because previously he'd made her write down all 20 things that was good about her job and all these people who she used to hate at the job. And Zig, in typical Zig's language, she came up to him at the end, and she said, hey, you may remember me. You sat down with me and said this, and he goes, yes, I remember. And this woman says, you can't believe how much those people have changed at work. And it was nothing to do with the people at work who changed. It's the way that she changed her mindset about how grateful that she were by analyzing down. And I'd probably kill that story, and I apologize profusely to the Ziegler Corporation for murdering that story, but go check it out. It's an amazing experience about just looking about what you have. And sometimes it's not about what you want to achieve, because as entrepreneurs, we're all trying to grow and be positive and go forward. And that's awesome, and keep doing that. But sometimes you just got to be grateful for what you have. I love that example there of what Laura says about just being grateful for a warm bed, because especially at this time of year, there's a lot of people out there in sleeping bags, or not even that, in the streets. And it's not just the cold and things like that, it's how safe they are and things like that. So be grateful for what you've got, and picture that. Again, shoot me a message, use the hashtag The Open Mic about what you're grateful for. We'll get that shared with Laura as well. So really appreciate you sharing that.
And of course, gratitude is a hot topic. You hear it talked about everywhere, but I would challenge the entrepreneurs. Are you in the practice of it, or are you just thinking about the practice of it?
Interesting.
So be in it, be actively practicing the energy of it every single day. And every time you turn down into, I call it the pit, of the negative thinking, because we all want what we want, and we are all on a track for success, or a little bit more than what we have, but we have so much. So any moment of the day you can do this. You need to be in the practice, and watch what happens when you start to do that, right?
Amazing. Yeah, you will certainly see an uplift up there. So it sounds crazy, but I know you've mastered this. Author of 8, soon to be 10 books. There's no such thing as writer's block. I've got about 3 books that I think I started. Now, I can blog, I can podcast, I can write content, some good, some bad, some indifferent, but I've never managed to get those 3 ideas into a book. So when you say there's no, what's the secret to unlocking that sort of writer's block? And whether it's content, blogging, or whatever. I mean, I know I've got my way, but I'd love you to share with the audience, how do we overcome the writer's block syndrome?
Yeah, there's no such thing, because as soon as you're blocked up and stuck, you're just thinking too much. And so you've lost the connection with the body. I'm going to go there again. You've lost the connection with your intuition and the feeling senses, where there is no block ever. That is a continuous creative flow that as soon as you learn how to connect with it, you're good. There is no writer's block. It's just when that happens to people, they've just gone kind of back up into their head, and they stopped themselves up with the thinking instead of really feeling their way through. A writing message that moves through you can be, I use this word gingerly, but channeled. Yeah. People talk about that feeling, and I'm very, very grateful to have experienced it in my lifetime. So now I know what they're talking about. But before I did, it was so mysterious to me, and I didn't really believe it, and I didn't think I could do it, even if other people could do it, right? But really it's about connecting into that into your feeling senses and your intuitive senses. And it's a practice like everything else.
It's a discipline. Yeah. You've got to put the effort in to get the output. You're not just going to roll up and do that. But, if people want to sort of get started with that, let's just take it down a level, that point. And they are, in their opinion, in writer's block mode. They can't get started. What is that? Is that meditation again? Go back to meditation. Go back to some fitness. Go out for a run. Walk the dogs. Anything like? Is that? Would they then? What's the fuse? What's the starting point that you can then get going with that? Is it the most prominent thing in your mind, Laura? Just share with us a little bit, because I'm learning from you here big time as well. So I think that's a total off the script question. I'm just going for this to help me sometimes.
I use a lot of tactics, and some of which you mentioned. Sometimes I need to move my body and just go for a walk in nature, leave the phone, leave everything, and just go connect like that. That is a very quick way for me. You know what? It's as simple as connecting with your breath sometimes. Just stop thinking and breathe and feel your breath, and be completely grateful that you are sitting here on the planet, breathing deeply, clean air it goes back to the warm bed idea, right? But it's all energy shift. So how do you all like to shift your energy? Does turning on music and dancing help you shift? Does meditating for 5 minutes and just clearing your mind do that for you? Sometimes even petting my dog for a couple of minutes does that for me.
Yeah.
And I can connect quickly now because I'm used to it. You will be able to do that.
Yep.
And so you just have to make a list of the things that help you shift your energy. There are many things. Take a bath, take a shower, walk in the woods, turn on the music, but mostly get out of your head.
Yeah. That's it. And that's interesting, because most people think, I've got to block myself out. I've got to think, I've got to concentrate, but that's probably doing more harm than good, sort of thing. So I love that idea. And as we wrap out on the show, Laura, I know we talked earlier about, and I've got this vivid image. I don't know what Shirley looks like, but I know you talked earlier about, putting a face to that sort of problem and things like that. I know you talk about the biggest problem with your purpose is it doesn't have a face, but I'd love you just to expand on maybe some more examples around that, if you could, because I think, ultimately a lot of people feel that maybe the purpose, I haven't got that figured out yet, or whatever it would be. But this is a totally different approach, which I'm really loving the sort of insights. So could you just dig deep down a little bit more about the biggest problem with your purpose, it doesn't have a face, and maybe how the listeners in business and in their life as well can maybe dig a bit deeper and get started with that, because I think that was really powerful, the story about Shirley and things like that, and maybe you could help us expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, of course. Everybody, probably every entrepreneur listening understands about ideal client.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's another hot topic in the business coaching world, right? There's a lot about that. And I believe in it. And I believe in knowing who that person is, down to the flavor of green smoothie they like to drink, And so when I started to do the ideal client work for my business, I started to realize a lot of things. The biggest secret, of course, to that on the planet is your ideal client is just you 5 or 10 years ago when you started to overcome your own problem, right? So a lot of the time we're talking to ourselves. We are creating programs for ourselves, the things we needed. And then, but taking it to the idea of a face is really more about, our worth gets so tied into topics sometimes, or big things that we can't quite grasp all the way, like climate change, for example, or and we attach to an idea, but then we lose human connection with the idea. We don't have the face in mind anymore, the person we can wrap our arms around and hug. We start to have the idea that our purpose has something to do with doing this big thing. And like I said earlier, it's like, okay, I want to help as many people as possible. I want to help people feel better, as a physical therapist.
Yeah.
But when I had my Shirley moment, I realized it was so much more about human connection that was the moment that it changed the game for me, because at that point it didn't really matter what I did. It was going to serve somebody who needed something. You know, what is that something that they're needing? Well, I could create 10 offerings that would give that to, but I had to get to that point where I knew that, and I knew who to be behind my why. And they talk about the why a lot too in business, right? So I would say who's the fuel behind your why, you know? And what if it's yourself? Like, okay, like that's okay. You know, it's okay to be selfish about that, because changing yourself changes the world too, you know?
Absolutely. Do you know, that's a great tip. And, you know, also just picking up right at the back end of that, what Laura just said there, you know, you, as an entrepreneur to be successful, you do need, when I use the word mean streak, I don't mean that you go out and be, you know, turn people over or do wrong, but you do need to have a ruthless element to achieve your goals. And, you know, as long as that you're putting value out there, and, you know, my view is always to provide more value than I ever charge for in exchange in fee. But, you know, change yourself, put that forward, you know, absolutely. It's the first time I've ever heard it put that way. And I think this is an amazing statement, which is your ideal client is probably you 5 or 10 years ago, where you create something to solve what you were going through there. And that's an amazing statement there as well. And, you know, when you think about creating your personas, avatars, ideal customer profile, call it what you will, go and have a good long look in the mirror and see where you were. And I guarantee you'll probably have, well, that's me. Might not be all, but that's great. And thank you for educating me on that one. That's an amazing shortcut. And it can take sometimes just personas, you can put maybe not 100, but 10s, 20 hours, 30 hours doing client workshops, interviews, thinking it through. Just ask yourself that question. Is my ideal client me 5 or 10 years ago? And it probably is going to be somewhere close. So thanks for sharing that with us, Laura. That's amazing. Yeah. I really, really, really appreciate you sharing your time, your experience, the journeys. It's been inspirational, to say the least. And I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, my total pleasure. Thanks for having me. What a great conversation.
Absolutely. And it wouldn't be the open mic as we head out the show without asking you to sort of bring it or boil it down into sort of 3 pro tips. I know there's so much and so much value we've covered, Laura, but if we were to try and, for people listening out there, whether it's in the life, in the business, a combination, overcoming the fear, get it down to 3 pro tips for us. How would you sort of, you know, state those out?
3 pro tips. With awareness, you have a choice. Yeah. So get to ninja levels of awareness this year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, realize your purpose-driven fear is a compass. Yeah. Get to know what that feels like in you.
That's great.
Now, again, going for ninja levels there, right? Why not? And 3, the last one, your fear of not good enough is really kind of boring.
Yeah.
So get over yourself. It's not really about you anymore. It's about the person and whose life you might change or even save when you get brave and share your gifts.
That's amazing. So awareness, get ninja. Yeah. You know, on that, you know, realize your purpose. You know, I love the idea that you see it as a fear is a compass, and you got to work that out. Not good enough, get over it. That's it. So that's it. You've been told, get over it. Direct from Laura. I'll be a little bit more direct. But yeah, think about who you can change, and just think about what Shirley looks like. I don't know what she looks like, but I've got a picture of her already. She's happy. She's been an excellent mother to her kids. She's found a purpose, and she's probably passing that on to somebody else, and she's now making a difference in the world as well. So yes. It's also, if I could add a 4th one to that as well, or it's probably contagious. You know, you help people out there, and then you go and help and help and help and help.
Exactly, the ripple.
Absolutely. So please go and check out Laura's website at lauradifranco.com. Please, if you've enjoyed the show, shoot her a message. You can pick up, you know, a lot of content using the hashtags Brave Healer, Brave Healing, Authentic Healing. We're going to put all those in the show notes and on the links. Please check out Laura's podcast as well, if you like, you know, more of this sort of stuff. And you know, as we head into, and we're just starting the new year out now as this has been released. I hope you've got your goals and your dreams worked out. We wish you, a happy new year and wild success. Thanks again, Laura, for being on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting and interviewing you today.
Thank you very much. This is going to be a great 2020.
Absolutely. And as always, thanks to the listeners. We hope you stick around with us. We hope you get value. We appreciate you doing your growth engine development. As always, go out there, go do the hustle, go make it happen. And we're going to catch up with you on another Open Mic podcast real soon. Take care. God bless.
You have been listening to The Open Mic, brought to you by the Success Hub. To find out more and to get the resources we have mentioned in this podcast episode, simply visit blog.thesuccesshub.io and view the podcast section. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode. This podcast and associated materials is published under copyright to The Success Hub. All rights reserved. No reproduction of this material is permitted.